from a previous marriage, but it was in little Natalia that she would invest all her own frustrated hopes and dreams. When Natalia was small, Maria would take her to the picture show. She'd tell the little girl that the cameraman at the end of the Paramount newsreels was pointing his camera at her, so Natalia would pose for the movies. In 1943, Maria Gerdine saw her chance to make her dreams for her baby girl come true. The family was living in Santa Rosa, a small town near San Francisco. Biographer Warren Harris recounts Natalia's big break.
A movie was going to be filmed there by 20th Century Fox called Happy Land. They needed local people to appear as extras and perhaps play bit parts in the picture.
Maria got a part as an extra, according to biographer Christopher Nickens.
Maria looked at it as a way to supplement the income. They were in bad shape financially. And also, Natalie had been complimented by all sorts of people from day one about her personality, her looks. So Maria felt there was a chance of maybe a show business career of some kind.
Maria brought Natalia along for the shoots. One day she told the 4-year-old girl to go sit on the lap of the director, Irving Piquel, and sing him a song.
He thought she was quite charming and gave her a little bit in the movie, which she performed well.
Irving Piquel was so taken with Natalia that later he made her mother, Maria, an unusual offer.
Well, he apparently approached Maria about adopting Natalie, and they thought it was a joke. And so she said, sure, come over Saturday and you can take her. And they thought he was kidding. And he showed up with papers that he had drawn up. And everyone was appalled.
Natalia's father, Nicholas, was ready to kill Irving Piquel. Piquel dropped the adoption idea, but he maintained his connection to the little actress, sending Natalia presents over the next 2 years. In 1945, Piquel wanted Natalia to come to Hollywood to test for the part of an Austrian orphan in a new movie he was shooting at Universal International Pictures. The film was Tomorrow is Forever, a wartime drama set to star Orson Welles and Claudette Colbert. Natalia's father, Nicholas, refused to let her audition.
Nikolai was one of those simple, complicated people. He was a carpenter. He didn't understand the whole show business idea. He was from Russia, of course. And I just think he felt that it was a pipe dream.
But her mother, Maria, wanted Natalia to have the career she had missed. As always, mother got her way. Natalia made her screen test in Hollywood, but she wasn't able to cry on cue.
She sort of uncharacteristically froze during the first screen test. And I think primarily because she was under a lot of pressure. She sensed that it was a big deal. I'm sure her mother let her know that it was a big deal.
Maria, furious, forced Natalia to call Mr. Piquel and ask for another chance. This time, Natalia got coaching from her older sister, Olga. Olga reminded Natalia of the time their dog was hit by a car. That made Natalia cry on cue, and she got the part. When Tomorrow is Forever was released in 1946, Natalia Gerdine's name was changed to Natalie Wood. Maria Gerdine moved the family to Los Angeles, where they settled in the suburban San Fernando Valley. Natalie's father landed work as a studio carpenter and prop maker. At the age of 8, Natalie was signed to a contract with Universal International Pictures for $350 a week. Before long, Natalie was playing sweet or sarcastic kid sisters or daughters in 3 to 4 pictures a year, opposite such stars as Barbara Stanwyck, Jimmy Stewart, Irene Dunn, and Fred MacMurray. Ruta Lee appeared with Natalie in Marjorie Morningstar.
I swear that child came out of her mother's womb knowing how to act, and act well, to listen and to react. Acting is reacting.
In 1946, Natalie made a film about a skeptical little girl who doesn't believe in Santa Claus. The movie was Miracle on 34th Street. No one expected it to be a hit. The studio dumped it on the market in the middle of summer. But Natalie's performance as the child who discovers the joy of Christmas captivated the post-war audience and made her a bona fide star. Hollywood columnist James Bacon remembers,
what made her American sweetheart, I think, more than anything else, was Miracle on 34th Street. Seeing that every Christmas, kids grew up with that, you know. It's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz.
While Natalie was filming Miracle on 34th Street, Her mother, Maria, gave birth to another daughter. She was named Svetlana, but always went by the nickname Lana. The new baby did little to distract Maria's single-minded focus.
Maria really subjugated her life and the life of the other family members to her ambitions for Natalie. There's no getting around that.
At home, Maria and Natalie's father, Nicholas, fought constantly. Nicholas's drinking became a problem. Sometimes he'd get so drunk and violent that Natalie's mother would escape to a motel with her daughters until he calmed down. Natalie's childhood friend, actor Robert Blake, thinks her unhappy home life may have been the source of some of her phobias.
Natalie was terrified of a lot of things. She was terrified of earthquakes. She was terrified of thunder. It's all misplaced fear. You know, when children, generally speaking, are not loved, they become frightened.
One film experience in particular traumatized Natalie. In 1947, 9-year-old Natalie was shooting Driftwood, about a small-town doctor who adopts a girl who has never lived in civilization.
She had a scene where she was on a bridge during a storm, that she was running across the bridge that was rigged to collapse after she was safely off of it. Something happened and it collapsed while she was still on the bridge, and she fell over 10, some reports say 15 feet, into rushing water.
The accident fueled Natalie's fear of water and also left her physically scarred.
Natalie suffered an injury to her left wrist that resulted in a distended wrist bone that was never healed properly, and she had it for the rest of her life. And in fact, wore bracelets, managed to wear a bracelet under any circumstances for whatever film.
Despite the accident, Natalie thrived in front of the cameras.
The camera was her salvation. You know, people say, well, her mother pushed her into show business and stuff like that. Her problems, her emotional stuff, her pain, her fear, her terror didn't have to do with what her mother did to her in that sense.
As her home life became more complicated with her father's moodiness and drinking and her mother's drive, sometimes I think she felt more at home in those families on screen than she did in her own family.
One of Natalie's greatest fears, her fear of water, was intensified in 1952 while shooting a scene in the ocean.
She was in a picture with Betty Davis called The Star. And a scene called for Natalie to jump off a boat.
Director Stuart Heisler ordered 14-year-old Natalie to jump into the sea. Natalie, hysterical and in tears, told him she couldn't.
Betty Davis came in, and of course being a major star at that time on a lot of clout, told the director and producer, she says, if you make that girl go through with that, I'll walk off this picture. So she didn't have to jump in the water.
Natalie later said that Betty Davis was the first person who taught her to speak up for herself. Maybe it was the example of that legendary movie queen that inspired teenage Natalie 2 years later to defy her parents and pursue a controversial role that would change her life. Natalie Wood had appeared in 20 films opposite such stars as Betty Davis, Orson Welles, and Barbara Stanwyck. Her ambitious Russian mother, Maria Gurdine, had subordinated the family's needs to Natalie's career. But after a childhood of doing what she was told by directors, publicists, on-set welfare workers, teachers, and her parents, Natalie Wood was impatient to cut loose. In 1955, Warner Brothers executives had a hot new property on their hands. His name, James Dean. Dean had just caused a sensation in the film East of Eden and was being touted as the next Marlon Brando. Now the studio cast him as the tormented teenage anti-hero in Rebel Without a Cause. It was the first film that promised to deal sympathetically with juvenile delinquents from the white middle class. Natalie Wood already knew James Dean. They had met in 1954 when they co-starred in the television show General Electric Theater. Natalie was fascinated with this intense young method actor who was so serious about his calling. When she heard director Nicholas Ray was casting the part of Dean's misunderstood girlfriend Judy in Rebel Without a Cause, she went after the role with a passion she'd never shown before, according to biographer Christopher Nickens.
Every actress under 25 in Hollywood wanted the role in Rebel. but he felt she was too wholesome.
Ray turned Natalie down repeatedly. Finally, something happened that changed the director's perception.
I'm sure it was by coincidence. She was in an automobile accident driving herself. She hit a guardrail and overturned her car. She wasn't hurt seriously, but she was taken to the hospital. And when Nick Ray came to visit her, she took great joy in telling him that when the policeman showed up at the scene, he called her a juvenile delinquent. So she says, now do I get the part?
Natalie not only got the part, she briefly became romantically involved with Nicholas Ray. He was 43, she was 16. But Ray was the first director to give Natalie real artistic insight into her work. Actor Tab Hunter was under contract to Warner Brothers during this period.
I used to go on the set and watch her in some of the stuff with Rebel, and she was like a sponge working with a director. You know, she would just, whatever they wanted, I mean, she'd listen to their ideas and she'd find a way to make something work if it was a little strange for her.
Soon the gang of angst-filled young method actors from Rebel was hanging out poolside at the San Fernando Valley home of Natalie's old world Russian family.
I think that she was really hungry for the kind of people that she associated with on Rebel, including Jimmy Dean and Nick Adams and Dennis Hoffer, Sal Mineo, and the director Nicholas Ray. These were very, for lack of a better word, avant-garde people that she had never really come in contact with in Hollywood.
On September 30th, 1955, James Dean crashed his speeding silver Porsche in Northern California and was killed instantly. 4 days later, Rebel Without a Cause opened in theaters. The film ignited a firestorm. Suddenly, the misunderstood teen generation had two new idols, James Dean and Natalie Wood. Author Edward Z. Epstein, who later worked with Natalie as a film publicist, explains her social impact.
Natalie was the first movie queen of the rock generation because she was their age. Natalie was the young girl that Elvis's contemporaries identified with.
Actress Morgan Brittany remembers keeping a thick scrapbook of Natalie Wood clippings.
That's exactly who I wanted to be, was Natalie Wood. I begged my mother to buy me all the movie magazines back then, Photo Play, and Natalie, of course, was on every cover. It was who she was dating, who she was seeing, what she was doing, what she was wearing.
Natalie's breakthrough performance in Rebel Without a Cause earned her an Academy Award nomination as Best Supporting Actress. Although she didn't win, the fan mail started pouring into Warner Brothers. Millions of teenage girls were copying her hairstyles and outfits. Millions of teenage boys were falling in love. While other teens her age were slogging through homework and worrying about going steady, Natalie was living the life of a movie princess. She nominally attended Van Nuys High School in the San Fernando Valley, but most of her time away from movie making seemed taken up with glamorous high-visibility dates to nightclub openings and premieres. In 1956, she co-starred in A Cry in the Night opposite Raymond Burr, later known as TV's Perry Mason. Soon Natalie was being escorted around town by the older actor. Other regular escorts included the 42-year-old actor John Ireland, a young Robert Vaughn, Lance Raventlow, the heir to the Woolworth fortune, and Elvis Presley.
People forget that Elvis Presley was crazy about Natalie. And had she so desired, I think she definitely could have managed to become Mrs. Presley.
Natalie visited Elvis's family home in Memphis in November 1956. Gossip columnist Luella Parsons speculated over a possible elopement, but the truth was, the excitement was wearing off, at least for Natalie.
She had been around movie sets and sophisticated people and sophisticated directors and writers and producers for 13 years. But Presley was a country boy who just exploded into popularity.
Natalie's growing boredom wasn't the only problem in their relationship.
Elvis's beloved mother wasn't crazy about Natalie because she was a free spirit. She had a mind of her own. And Natalie was not crazy about Mrs. Presley because Mrs. Presley reminded her of her own mother, who was a stage mother.
In fact, far from inspiring wedding bells, Natalie's Memphis visit marked the end of the affair. Mrs. Presley gave her such a hard time that after 2 days, Natalie phoned home and begged to come back early. Natalie's work obligations never let up. To get the coveted role in Rebel Without a Cause, she had signed a 7-year contract with Warner Brothers. Before long, the studio teamed her with Tab Hunter in 2 films, The Burning Hills, a Western based on a Louis L'Amour novel, and The Girl He Left Behind, a peacetime army romance. Hunter recollects the fans' reactions when he and Natalie were on cross-country publicity tours.
We took a lot of tours. I remember one in New York and in Chicago in particular. We were there for the opening of the picture, and we got swamped. We had to hide out in the police had to escort us into some warehouse someplace. I mean, we were just mobbed.
The fan magazines covered Tab Hunter and Natalie Wood as if they were lovers, which was just how Warner Brothers wanted them to be perceived. Hollywood columnist James Bacon remembers.
The romance of Tab Hunter and Natalie Wood was inspired by the publicity department. You know, they give those twosomes to columnists just to get the name of the picture in print.
In truth, Tab Hunter and Natalie became good friends. There was a playful quality to their relationship. One time they were at the studio getting ready for a big premiere after a day of shooting.
Perce Westmore's wife, Maggie, she was doing her hair. She said, "I don't know what to do with your hair, Natalie. It's a mess from being out in the rocks and the wind and the sun all day." I stuck my head in and I said, "Cut it all off. Just cut it off." I stuck my head back in 5 minutes, and she looked incredible. She'd cut all of her hair real short. They photographed her that night. She made headlines all over the world.
During the shooting of The Girl He Left Behind, the studio sent Natalie to a press luncheon at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, according to biographer Warren Harris.
Every studio sent a contingent of their young stars to hang around there and be photographed and so forth. And she ran into Robert Wagner at this party.
Robert Wagner, or RJ as his friends called him, was a contract player at 20th Century Fox. 8 years older than Natalie, RJ came from a wealthy Detroit steel family. He had captured attention in films like With a Song in My Heart and Prince Valiant. With his all-American good looks, RJ quickly became a Bobby Sox idol. In fact, the hotel press luncheon was not the first time Natalie Wood laid eyes on Robert Wagner. That had actually happened when she was 10 and he was 18. They were both working at 20th Century Fox, and RJ was in Marine fatigues for his role in the movie The Halls of Montezuma.
Natalie and her mother were walking down the corridor, one of the corridors at 20th Century Fox, and this gorgeous man came along. Then she turned to her mother and she said, "I'm going to marry that man someday."
Something sparked between Wagner and Wood at that press luncheon in 1956. RJ asked Natalie to the opening of a new film he had just made with Spencer Tracy called The Mountain. The premiere happened to coincide with her 18th birthday. Before long, RJ joined the long line of suitors waiting to escort Natalie to parties and nightclubs. But there was something different about this relationship for both of them. Child actress Natalie Wood was on her way to becoming an adult star. Her breakthrough portrayal of James Dean's troubled girlfriend in Rebel Without a Cause earned her the first of 3 Academy Award nominations and made her a teen idol to millions. After a mad period of dating everyone from Dennis Hopper to Elvis Presley, Natalie finally fell seriously in love. The romance between 18-year-old Natalie Wood and 26-year-old heartthrob Robert Wagner, known to his friends as RJ, blossomed in the most public of ways. Hollywood columnist James Bacon remembers.
They fell in love quickly, I'll tell you that, because that's all RJ could see in those days was Natalie Wood. He was very much in love with her.
Natalie was satisfied with her love life, but less so with her career. As a contract player at Warner Brothers, she was being cast in B-movies that did nothing to build on the artistry she had experienced in Rebel Without a Cause. Then Natalie heard that Warner Brothers was casting the film version of Marjorie Morningstar, a best-selling novel about an aspiring Jewish actress. Marjorie Morningstar was being touted as the next Gone with the Wind. There was huge competition for the title role, according to biographer Christopher Nickens.
She really wanted to play the lead. When Liz Taylor and Audrey Hepburn dropped out as possible film choices, she was determined. So she went to New York and she met with the author Herman Wouk, who had, if not casting approval, which authors almost never do, certainly influence on the casting.
But Natalie, the sophisticated young movie queen, struck Herman Wouk as far too worldly to play the inexperienced Marjorie. Natalie didn't give up. When she found out that producer Milton Sperling was launching a nationwide campaign to find a Marjorie, she practically forced him to give her a screen test. Her friend Robert Blake remembers.
People were just generally enamored of Natalie. Whether she knew it or not, she was the boss. And that's just the way she was.
Sure enough, Natalie's screen test turned Herman Wouk around. The author later said he found her absolutely electrifying. As Natalie prepared for the role that she hoped would launch her into adult stardom, Robert Wagner went to Japan for 2 months to shoot a spy thriller, Stop Over Tokyo, with Joan Collins. Natalie was not pleased. Biographer Warren Harris explains.
Natalie had visions of him having an affair with Joan Collins, which I don't believe is true.
Natalie retaliated by very publicly dating hotelier Nicky Hilton, who just happened to be Joan Collins' boyfriend. That got RJ's attention. When Natalie began shooting Marjorie Morningstar at Scroon Lake in the Adirondack Mountains of New York, RJ secretly joined her there.
Natalie was staying in one of the big hotels there. She had a room, and her mother and sister had the room next door. After the second day, Robert Wagner was sharing the room with Natalie, although it was kept very hush-hush.
In the moral climate of 1957, two unmarried stars openly sleeping together was unthinkable, but extremely newsworthy.
Eventually word got out to the press that they were there, and, well, you know, these legions of, I don't know if they called them paparazzi in those days, but that's what I mean. They all showed up and started hounding them.
Merely being cast in Marjorie Morningstar suddenly made Natalie a more bankable actress. United Artists approached Warner Brothers about loaning Natalie out to co-star in a World War II drama, Kings Go Forth, with Frank Sinatra and Tony Curtis. Natalie would still get her contract salary of $750 a week from Warner Brothers, but United Artists would pay Warner $7,500 a week for her services.
This was something that studios did all the time with all the big stars. In some cases, they made more money from these actors by loaning them out than they did from the pictures that they made.
Natalie had little say in the matter, but she felt exploited by her studio boss, the legendary Jack Warner. As the end of 1957 approached, Robert Wagner was having career problems of his own. Stop Over Tokyo was a flop. The difficulties seemed to bring Natalie and RJ closer together. Natalie later confided in Sugar Blymeyer, her studio hairstylist.
Natalie told me how RJ is what she called him, proposed to her the first time. She said they were in a restaurant and he had ordered a bottle of champagne and there were 2 champagne glasses. And somehow he had slipped a ring into the glass and she went to take a drink and she looked down and here was this beautiful piece of jewelry in there, and that was his way of proposing to her.
RJ proposed on December 6, 1957. By December 7th, the engagement was splashed all over the Hollywood gossip columns. The public seemed in love with Natalie and RJ. On December 28, 1957, Natalie and RJ were married in a 20-minute private ceremony in the Scottsdale Methodist Church in Arizona, where RJ's parents lived. Natalie and RJ's honeymoon culminated with 4 days of sailing off the shores of Catalina Island on RJ's boat, My Lady. Natalie once said that although being immersed in water terrified her, being on the water or around it gave her a sense of calm. As soon as she returned to Los Angeles, Natalie completed Kings Go Forth. Studio head Jack Warner immediately sent her on a publicity tour to promote Marjorie Morningstar. Natalie was furious at being separated from her new husband, but she had no choice. In New York alone, Natalie did over 100 interviews. Nonetheless, Marjorie Morningstar bombed.
Natalie saw Marjorie Morningstar as her great dramatic breakthrough, but unfortunately it didn't work out that way. Natalie's fine in it, but it didn't really elevate her career the way, say, something like Rebel did.
In early 1958, United Artists offered Warner Brothers $100,000 for the loan of Natalie to star in George Bernard Shaw's The Devil's Disciple. The film was to be shot in England and would co-star Kirk Douglas, Burt Lancaster, and Laurence Olivier. Only married 3 months, Natalie refused to leave RJ, who was already committed to 2 pictures in Los Angeles. That did it for Jack Warner. Citing breach of contract, he put Natalie on unpaid suspension. She couldn't work for Warner Brothers or for anyone else until Jack Warner said so.
This was something they used all the time, and it was one of the most hated aspects of the studio contract system.
Natalie had spent her life being told what to do. Now unemployed, she didn't know what to do with herself. Natalie wanted to have a baby, but RJ didn't feel ready. She began to suffer from insomnia and started taking sleeping pills. Finally, against RJ's wishes, she saw a psychiatrist. She became so committed to psychoanalysis that she went every day.
It's my sincere belief that her being in show business was never her problem. That was her solution. Her problem was away from the camera. Her problem was a thing called life. Her problem was a thing called family, love, security. And I think that she fell in love with the camera. It was her home, not her home away from home, it was her home.
For 14 months, Jack Warner sent Natalie a stream of mediocre scripts. For 14 months, she turned them all down. Warner kept her on unpaid suspension.
She knew the good director. She knew the good scripts. Natalie was not like other people who were afraid to have talent around them. Natalie always surrounded herself with heavyweights.
Finally, the powerful gossip columnist Louella Parsons intervened. She threatened to stop plugging Jack Warner's films in her nationwide column if Warner didn't play fair with Natalie. In March 1959, Jack Warner relented. Natalie won a hefty raise and, more importantly, control over her career. For every picture she made for Warner Brothers, she now had the right to do a non-Warner Brothers movie of her own choosing.
She was smart. She was tough. She could sit down at an oak table with the toughest suits in this town and tangle ass with them and come out on top.
By 1959, Natalie Wood's career was in trouble. No longer the teen icon from Rebel Without a Cause. She was forced into bad B movies by her powerful studio boss, Jack Warner. After a heated battle with Warner, she won the right to make pictures of her own choosing. And she met and married the love of her life, Robert Wagner, known as RJ to friends. But problems were lurking beneath the couple's happy public facade. In 1959, studio boss Jack Warner cast Natalie in a Wall Street romance, Cash McCall. She starred opposite James Garner, the hot leading man from TV's Maverick. The movie bombed, recalls biographer Christopher Nickens.
After Marjorie Morningstar, she made films that were primarily focused on her male co-stars, and they weren't terribly good. And I think that she was really concerned by 1960 that she was still an ingenue and her career was in jeopardy.
Her private life wasn't much better. Natalie was seeing a psychiatrist every day, a practice Robert Wagner frowned upon. Money was becoming a problem too. Natalie's 14-month suspension had strained their finances, but that didn't stop the couple from buying an expensive mansion in Beverly Hills, which Natalie lavishly remodeled. Natalie and RJ had vowed never to make a film together just to cash in on their relationship. But when MGM offered the couple $50,000 above their regular salaries to co-star in All the Fine Young Cannibals, they changed their minds.
I see a cat come up out of the Texas jungle. This is that cat breaking loose now.
The turbulent tempo of a hot trumpet. Barbaric music of youth restlessly searching for love.
Couldn't stop myself. Chad, don't punish me.
Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner, in their first picture together, had the cast of young moderns in All the Fine Young Cannibals.
If I can't have you, then I want to hurt you. And I will.
I can't leave him.
Why?
He thinks it's his child.
Hollywood columnist James Bacon remembers the public's reaction.
Practically put both of them out of the business. She told me once the most horrible thing she'd ever done, but she just wanted to do something with RJ.
Soon after that disaster, Natalie heard about Splendor in the Grass. Written by Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright William Inge, the film was to be directed by Elia Kazan, one of the founders of New York's famed Actors Studio. Natalie knew a collaboration with these two artists would be an incredible boost to any career. She was determined to get the lead role, according to her friend Robert Blake.
When she went to get Splendor in the Grass from Elia Kazan, I think she hypnotized him. I mean, that part was one of the plum parts of the universe. and there were probably about 20 major Elizabeth Taylor quality stars out there that were being considered for that part.
Kazan cast Natalie as Deanie Loomis, the good girl who is suffocated by her small town's repressive sexual attitudes. For the part of the football star who breaks Deanie's heart, writer William Inge pushed Kazan to cast his unknown protege, Warren Beatty. At the time, Warren Beatty was engaged to actress Joan Collins, but he already had a reputation as a ladies' man. Both Joan Collins and Robert Wagner went to New York, where Splendor in the Grass was shooting, to keep an eye on their mates, but their presence seemed to have little effect on the growing heat between Beatty and Wood.
Now, she always claimed that their affair didn't begin until after the filming was completed, but there are others who feel that they did start to at least fall in love during filming.
Biographer Warren Harris.
A lot of people believe that his attraction to Natalie was sort of twofold. I mean, first there was the sexual attraction, and second was what it could do for his career by becoming involved with her.
Beatty's career did indeed benefit, according to author Edward Z. Epstein.
When Natalie became romantically interested in him, so did the press. And suddenly Warren Beatty was the man of the moment. Who is this guy that Natalie Wood is interested in?
As for Natalie's husband, publicly, RJ said nothing. The off-screen chemistry between Beatty and Wood translated into fireworks on-screen, and with Kazan pushing Natalie to make bolder acting choices than she ever had before, she earned her second Academy Award nomination, this time for Best Actress. Although she didn't win the Oscar, Splendor in the Grass catapulted Natalie into the ranks of adult stardom. As a result, she was presented with a new challenge. United Artists had the film rights to the hit Broadway musical West Side Story. Co-directors Jerome Robbins and Robert Wise were casting the lead roles of the lovers Tony and Maria.
Somebody said, listen, I understand there's a very good test of Warren Beatty over at Warner Brothers for Splendor in the Grass. And who was in the test was Warren, but Natalie. And we hadn't thought of Natalie. The minute she came on the screen, we said, oh, there she is, there's our Maria.
Natalie had no musical theater training, but she had something else the filmmakers felt was more important: the box office clout necessary to attract an audience for an expensive musical. Indeed, Natalie was a big enough star to ask for and receive $250,000, one of the highest Hollywood salaries of 1961. But West Side Story interested Natalie for another reason.
Natalie wanted to sing more than she wanted to breathe. She loved being a singer. I used to play the guitar for her, and she would sing.
As the young Puerto Rican Maria, Natalie had to sing a number of songs, including the memorable Tonight. Robbins and Wise were skeptical, but they gave her a shot.
The singing was very difficult. The score by Leonard Bernstein is practically operatic, and even the greatest singers in the world have complained about the difficulty in singing it.
We tried it, but it just finally wasn't good enough to be in the film, so we had to take it all out, and Marnie Dixon did the whole singing performance.
On the set, Natalie reportedly kept to herself.
She was very insecure. People like Rita Moreno had been around a long time, was gifted, could do anything, sing, dance, act. George Chakiris, who played Bernardo, had been a dancer in Hollywood for years, was very adept with acting and dancing.
Despite her insecurities, Natalie's performance as the strong-willed Maria earned her popular and critical acclaim. And when West Side Story swept the Oscars in 1962, the mere fact that she had starred in it gave her agents the clout to double her asking price. In the meantime, except for All the Fine Young Cannibals, RJ hadn't worked for more than a year. While Natalie shot West Side Story, he made Sail a Crooked Ship, a dismal crime caper co-starring Ernie Kovacs. At home, his marriage to Natalie was crumbling. The final straw came when Natalie promised RJ she would co-host the Sail a Crooked Ship rap party, then showed up late with Warren Beatty in tow. The next day, the announcement came. The couple had decided to separate. Warren Beatty moved in with Natalie after his fiancée, Joan Collins, kicked him out. Natalie and Warren became inseparable. In April 1962, they caused a sensation when they showed up together for the Academy Awards. Natalie was not yet divorced, but she filed papers later that month. The divorce hearing was rushed through in an unheard of 10 days, so she could leave for the Cannes Film Festival with Beatty. Natalie's next role was in another film version of a hit Broadway musical, Gypsy. Natalie's life had obvious parallels with that of the real-life burlesque queen, Gypsy Rose Lee, who had been pushed into show business by an ambitious stage mother. Natalie's co-star was Rosalind Russell. Her director was Mervyn LeRoy. Morgan Brittany was 8 when she played Baby June opposite Natalie in Gypsy.
To look at her, you would think, oh my gosh, she's so cute, she's so tiny. But yet, when she walked in or when she talked to someone, when she'd have a conversation with Mervyn LeRoy or one of the choreographers, she knew exactly what she wanted. And if it wasn't to her expectations, you fixed it.
Mesmerized by Natalie Wood, Brittany would sneak out of her studio classes and watch through a window as Natalie rehearsed. Brittany saw a side of Natalie that the star normally kept hidden.
She was very nervous about the fact that coming off of West Side Story, where her voice had been dubbed, and she sounded so beautiful that people would see this and hear her when she really didn't sing that well, and she was very afraid of the striptease numbers. She was very afraid that she wouldn't look voluptuous enough.
Warren Beatty was often present on the set.
And she'd sit in his lap, and she'd take his glasses sometimes and put them back on his face. I mean, very, very affectionate toward each other. From what I could see, he was very supportive of her. If she was nervous about something, he would be there and say, you can do this. You can do this. You're good at this.
Whatever Natalie's insecurities behind the cameras, they were invisible in the sexy, vulnerable performance she gave in Gypsy, one of the last great Hollywood musicals.
Let me entertain you. I'm not staying in burlesque. I'm moving. Maybe up, maybe down. But wherever it is, I'm enjoying it. I'm having the time of my life. Because for the first time, it is my life. And I love it. I love every second of it. And I'll be damned if you're going to take it away from me. We'll have a real good time.
By 1963, Natalie Wood's success in such films as Splendor in the Grass, West Side Story, and Gypsy catapulted her to the peak of her profession. At 25, she was one of Hollywood's most powerful players, commanding top dollar, top scripts, and approval over her directors, co-stars, cinematographers, costume designers, and hair and makeup artists. But Natalie's private life was a mess. Her marriage to Robert Wagner fell victim to a very public affair with Warren Beatty. She was seeing a psychiatrist daily and using sleeping pills. In her next film, the controversial Love with the Proper Stranger, Natalie broke new ground for women. She played Angie, an Italian-American sales clerk who chooses to undergo an illegal abortion rather than enter into a loveless marriage. Performing with verve opposite Steve McQueen, Natalie earned her 3rd Academy Award nomination. At home, which she shared with her lover, Warren Beatty, problems were brewing. Sugar Blymeyer, Natalie's studio hairstylist, remembers.
He was like so mean to her. She'd make plans for something and she wouldn't know if he was going to show up. He like always was jerking her leash all the time.
Warren, recalls Hollywood columnist James Bacon, simply couldn't be trusted.
Warren was a man of many women in those days. He was a town's resident stud.
Natalie's divorce from R.J. Wagner was due to become final in April 1963. It was widely believed that Natalie and Warren would marry, but by the time the divorce came through, Warren was gone. Natalie was shattered by the breakup, according to her friend, actor Robert Blake.
Natalie was like a raw nerve. She was lacking about 6 layers of skin. There was only one little thin layer left where her feelings were concerned. If she loved you, you could destroy her in a heartbeat.
Natalie dealt with her pain by beginning a string of wild romances that were destined to end badly. Her first was with Arthur Lowe Jr., the scion of the Lowe's theater family. Actress Carol Lindley remembers.
I don't know how Arthur came into her life, but I know that when he did, we all went, oh, yes, because he was kind of stable, he was funny, he was independently wealthy, he came from a showbiz background.
Natalie's engagement to Arthur Lowe was announced on January 9th, 1964. It was called off on May 8th. Soon, Natalie met a jet-setting Venezuelan shoe manufacturer named Ladislav Blodnik. Her friend, screenwriter Tom Mankiewicz, remembers.
That was some sort of mad fling, and he was like a nightclub act. A very expansive guy whose big trick was eating a glass at the dinner table.
Natalie's engagement to Ladislav Blodnik was announced on April 19, 1965. It was called off on November 29th. She then dated Stuart Whitman, Tom Courtenay, Henry Jaglom, and Frank Sinatra. Ruta Lee, Natalie's co-star in Marjorie Morningstar, elaborates on Natalie's relationships.
She obviously had troubles with finding the right men. There were lots of men, and she had her flings with them. But somehow it wasn't promiscuity with Natalie. Somehow there was a gentleness and a sweetness that kept her ever from becoming anything that at that time we would have said was trampy.
Filmmaker Henry Jaglom, who had a romantic relationship with Natalie, sensed the deep conflict in her.
She was very much playing the part of the good girl in Hollywood. She'd learned from early childhood how to get along, how to be a star. I think what appealed to her about me was that I was very dismissive of all of that, which she didn't feel she could be, but that some part of her wanted to be.
Natalie obsessively wore bracelets hiding extended wrist bones that was the result of a childhood accident on a movie set. Jaglom thinks the bracelets symbolize something larger for Natalie.
One day I said to her, you're going to go on television tonight. I said, let's try something. Do it without the bracelet. She turned completely white, and she said, that's like doing it naked for me. It's a good metaphor, actually, for the rigidity that the Hollywood structure had imposed upon her and upon her mind so early in life that she thought she could never allow anybody to see a flaw.
Troubled as Natalie's personal life was, publicly, she had never been so successful. Her friend David Niven Jr. remembers.
In the early 60s, I was working at the Willie Morris Agency, and Natalie and Elizabeth Taylor were the two highest paid movie actresses in the world. The Willie Morris Agency didn't want to lose her as a client, and so I think they bent over backwards to make sure whatever she wanted, she would have.
She had 2 dressing rooms. She had a stereo in each thing, and she had a phone. Now, that was unheard of, that you'd have a phone in each thing. And she really got everything she ever asked for.
She was in a position, which was very rare at that time, to approve of directors and approve of co-stars.
In 1965, Natalie used that power to bring an unknown actor to the attention of her director. The film was Inside Daisy Clover.
On the lot, there was this attractive young man that Natalie spoke to Robert Mulligan, the director, about, and that was Robert Redford. And I really felt Natalie was instrumental in getting him on that picture.
Natalie was passionate about the part of Daisy, a scrappy adolescent star who falls victim to the ruthless Hollywood establishment. She hoped her performance would finally earn her an Academy Award, but she wasn't even nominated, and the film bombed. Her next movie was This Property is Condemned, directed by Sidney Pollack. Natalie was forced to face her water phobia, according to co-star Robert Blake.
She had a scene where she was supposed to stand there in the water with Charlie Bronson. And when Pollack said, action, I took a breath and slid down right next to her and put my arms around her legs and held on to her. That's the only way she could have enough presence of mind to get the dialogue out.
Despite the co-starring presence of Robert Redford and Natalie's strong performance as a Mississippi teenager who was sexually exploited by her mother, This Property is Condemned was one of the box office flops of 1966. That same year, Natalie starred in the crime caper Penelope.
For the first time in all the time I knew her, she didn't seem very happy, and she she was like lonesome, I felt. And I felt all her friends were getting married and having families, and for some reason it just wasn't working for her.
Director Arthur Hiller witnessed Natalie's crippling insecurities.
I think it was twice a week, or maybe it was 3 times a week, we had to schedule so that she would have time to go to her psychiatrist. So we'd have to allow a couple of hour break. We'd know we wouldn't have her for a couple of hours. So certainly she was feeling the need of help.
Natalie's depression was becoming serious. She was relying on Secanols to get to sleep. A romance with a married European director ended painfully when he refused to leave his wife. Finally, toward the end of 1966, she tried to kill herself by swallowing a bottle of sleeping pills. A friend found Natalie on the stairs outside her bedroom and rushed her to the hospital. The potentially scandalous suicide attempt was kept a secret.
I think Natalie suffered at that time from being single, being independent, being rich, being famous, and working constantly, and all of the pressures that has, and then trying to have a personal life too. And there was less latitude than there is now. Women can say, go yourself, much easier now.
Having worked almost non-stop since childhood, 28-year-old Natalie withdrew from the screen for 3 years. Piece by piece, she put her life back together. She continued psychoanalysis and started exploring interests outside of filmmaking.
One of the big moves of her life was to go to UCLA at night and take classes. I mean, you'd think that would be a little nickel and dime thing, but with her, it was life and death.
At a dinner party in the fall of 1967, Natalie was seated next to a handsome British talent agent named Richard Gregson.
Richard was the guy who represented the creme de la creme of British actors, directors, writers. And at the time, the Brits had almost taken over the movie business.
It wasn't long before Richard Gregson and Natalie Wood fell in love.
All Richard wanted to talk about was Natalie and how wonderful she was and how she works out and how great she looks and how she takes care of herself and how she's learning.
Gregson was going through a divorce, and it took 2 years to settle. During that time, he and Natalie lived together in Los Angeles and London. In 1969, a young writer-director named Paul Mazursky flew to London to meet with Natalie about a script.
She'd already read the script, and even though I knew she wanted to do it, I wasn't sure I wanted her. Because this is a satire. It's a tricky thing to do. I'd never seen her do anything quite like it. Well, the minute she walked into the restaurant and said hello to me and thanks for coming to England to see me, I wanted her. It only took 10 seconds.
The film was Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. Natalie was so interested in doing a low-budget sex comedy that she worked for no salary in exchange for a cut of the potential profits. To play opposite Natalie, Mazursky cast TV actor Robert Culp and newcomers Elliot Gould and Diane Cannon. Gould thinks Natalie's performance in Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice marked a turning point in her career.
Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice was a whole new world, a whole new beginning for Natalie.
It shot her back. In other words, it wasn't like we saved her. It's that she'd been child actress, child star, movie star. What's going on? Not working. Is she still a movie star? Movie star again.
Natalie's gamble paid off financially as well as professionally. A hit around the world, Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice made her a multi-millionaire. On May 30th, 1969, Natalie Wood married Richard Gregson at the Holy Virgin Mary Church in Los Angeles. Robert Redford was best man in the Russian Orthodox ceremony. 6 months later, Natalie became pregnant. After 25 years of working, the family she had longed for was adopted. By 1969, Natalie Wood experienced the peak of stardom and the depths of despair. After surviving a secret suicide attempt in 1966, she withdrew from the screen for 3 years. Natalie made her comeback in one of the biggest hits of the decade, Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. Newly married to British talent agent Richard Gregson, she was about to fulfill her long-standing dream of having a child. On September 29, 1970, Natalie gave birth to her first daughter. She named the baby Natasha. It was the happiest moment of her life. Screenwriter-director Tom Mankiewicz was a family friend.
She did an amazingly brave thing, which was to literally quit acting for the sake of trying to get some sort of normal life with a child, and I think that she desperately wanted a child.
But the normality Natalie was trying so hard to establish was about to be shattered. In August 1971, when Natasha was 10 months old, Natalie discovered that Richard Gregson was having an affair. She immediately kicked him out of the house, according to biographer Christopher Nickens.
There was talk that she had the locks changed, like the afternoon he moved his things out of the house. Clearly something dramatic happened. There was no indication among friends that they were having troubles.
Just days after Gregson moved out, Natalie filed for divorce.
One day, and there was, it was over. I mean, it didn't wind down slowly.
It wasn't long before the gossip columns were reporting Natalie's new romantic interests. First, California's Bachelor Secretary of State, Jerry Brown, and then her former co-star from Love with the Proper Stranger, Steve McQueen. Then, Robert Wagner, whom Natalie had divorced in 1963, started calling as well. RJ was engaged to Tina Sinatra. The engagement didn't last long. Neither did Natalie's fling with McQueen. Soon, Natalie and RJ were rekindling their relationship. This time, the couple seemed different, recalls actress Ruta Lee.
Natalie, in being away from Robert, did a lot of growing up. And so did he. I mean, he became a mensch. Before that, he was a wonderful, young, very spoiled boy. You know, very nice boy, well brought up, but a spoiled, young Hollywood man.
Actress Carol Lindley felt RJ gave Natalie what she most needed.
There was a sense that RJ would care for her and protect her and love her and give her stability. My feeling at the time that she was always looking for stability.
Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner's second wedding took place on July 16, 1972, on board a borrowed yacht anchored off the coast of Malibu. RJ took over the raising of Natasha, Natalie's daughter by Richard Gregson, who moved back to his native England. And Natalie became a stepmother to Katie Wagner, RJ's daughter by a previous marriage. On Natalie's 35th birthday, she learned she was pregnant once again. Courtney Brooke was born on March 9, 1974. In the years that she and RJ had been apart, he had become one of television's highest paid stars, playing a small-screen Cary Grant type in ABC's It Takes a Thief. In 1975, he reworked that formula into another series, Switch. It, too, was a hit. RJ and Natalie celebrated his success by buying a 60-foot yacht. They named her the Splendor, after Natalie's film Splendor in the Grass. Somehow, Natalie's lifelong phobia of being in the water did not extend topside.
She loved being on the boat, decorating the boat, having people on the boat, and there were lots of wonderful times on that boat.
The power cruiser quickly became the family's weekend getaway vehicle. Catalina Island, 26 miles away from Los Angeles, was a favorite playground. Longtime Catalina resident Doug Bombard leased a mooring to Robert Wagner.
You'd see him quite often in his wetsuit, and the kids would have their wetsuits on. And they were kind of water dogs. They loved the water. You didn't see Natalie. I don't think she was a water-oriented person.
While her daughters were small, Natalie's career took a backseat to motherhood, except when she could work with RJ. They co-starred in the 1973 TV movie The Affair, about a polio-stricken songwriter who falls in love for the first time. And in 1976, the couple starred in a TV production of Tennessee Williams' Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof earned Natalie her first Emmy Award nomination. The experience reignited her desire to act. When RJ's series Switch went off the air in 1978, Natalie went back to work with a vengeance. To reactivate her film career, Natalie played a Russian astrophysicist in Meteor, a disaster film she thought had blockbuster potential. She co-starred opposite Sean Connery, Brian Keith, and Carl Malden. Hairstylist Sugar Blymeyer recalls director Ronald Neam's irritation with Natalie.
He said to her, he said, why do you have those makeup people there and hairdressing? He says, and you look in the mirror before each take. Well, she was getting a little bit older, and she wanted to make sure that the lighting was good. So she said, I'll tell you what, when Sean Connery doesn't wear his hairpiece and Brian Keith doesn't wear his hairpiece and they don't spray Carl Marlden's hair on top so that the bald spot doesn't show, I'll get rid of my mirror.
Natalie had been aware of the movie industry's double standard toward women since her 20s, when filmmaker Henry Jaglom dated her.
We talked a great deal about the fact that how unfair it is in this business, that what happens to women, it doesn't happen to men. She always mentioned Roz Russell, for instance, and a lot of her friends who were very talented actresses, who had had big careers, were expected basically to retire as they hit their 50s.
Now that double standard was affecting Natalie directly. It became harder and harder to find film roles. Determined to take on new acting challenges, Natalie turned to the small screen, where TV movies and miniseries were enjoying massive popularity.
Natalie was a survivor, an emotional survivor, and an actor survivor. And I think she took the route by doing the TV where she was going to work.
Television movies like The Cracker Factory and The Memory of Eva Riker gave Natalie the chance to break new ground for women and to do some of the deepest work of her career. Indeed, Natalie won a Golden Globe Award and earned her second Emmy nomination for her performance in the NBC miniseries From Here to Eternity.
All right, he's gone. You can come out.
You know, I used to be a traveling salesman. This is the first time I ever had to hide in anybody's closet.
Stop crying. Stop crying. You don't know. You don't even care. All of this means nothing to you. It's just peace, isn't it? Go away. Tell me you need me. Just a little. Even if it's a lie. Tell me.
I need you, baby.
At around this time, Natalie's friend Tom Mankiewicz was working on an ABC TV pilot script about a rich couple, Jonathan and Jennifer Hart, who dabbled in detective work.
I said, you know, RJ, I just have to tell you, ABC has floated an idea about maybe you and Natalie in 6 two-hour films a year. And he looked at me and he said, I sell soap. My wife sells tickets.
RJ's first choice to play his wife was Stephanie Powers. As soon as it premiered in 1979, Heart to Heart was a hit. With Natalie and RJ's production company co-producing the show, Heart to Heart made the Wagners millions. In 1981, Natalie made another stab at resuscitating her film career. First, she took a supporting role in the movie Brainstorm because of its box office potential. The big-budget sci-fi thriller was set to be directed by Douglas Trumbull, who had done the special effects for the hits 2001 and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Brainstorm co-starred Christopher Walken, hot off an Oscar win for The Deer Hunter. For a juicier artistic challenge, Natalie turned to a whole new arena, the theater. After finishing Brainstorm, Natalie was scheduled to star in Anastasia, a play about the last Russian princess. Anastasia was due to open in February 1982 at the Amundsen Theater in Los Angeles. Natalie left for North Carolina to shoot Brainstorm in September 1981. Back on the set of Heart to Heart, there were rumors, according to biographer Warren Harris.
As soon as RJ and Stephanie Powers started working together, there were rumors going around that they were personally involved. At that time, Stephanie Powers was sort of winding down a relationship that she had had for many years with William Holden. William Holden had started drinking so heavily that she couldn't tolerate it, and she finally left him.
On November 16th, William Holden was found dead in his Santa Monica apartment. Stephanie Powers was so upset that production on Heart to Heart had to be shut down.
During that time, RJ spent several nights at her house. There was suspicion that perhaps maybe R.J. was doing more than just consoling her.
True or not, on Thanksgiving, Natalie was back in Los Angeles. She and R.J. hosted an open house for family and friends. Christopher Walken was there. They invited him to go on a cruise to Catalina Island over the weekend. Natalie Wood had remarried her first love, Robert Wagner. At 43, she was trying to reactivate her career. Natalie was preparing to venture into theater for the first time in Anastasia, a play about the last Russian princess. She was also doing a science fiction film, Brainstorm, starring opposite Christopher Walken, but a horrendous tragedy would prevent Natalie from ever fulfilling her plans. Natalie took off with R.J. on a blustery Friday, November 27th, for a Thanksgiving weekend cruise on board their yacht, the Splendor. They had invited Christopher Walken to see the sights of Santa Catalina Island, a Pacific playground to Hollywood stars since the 1930s. After a scenic cruise along Catalina's shoreline, the Splendor dropped anchor at two harbors on Saturday, November 28th. Natalie and Walken went ashore in the Splendor's inflatable Zodiac dinghy. They passed the afternoon at Doug's Harbor Reef and Saloon, where R.J. and their boat captain, Dennis DeVerne, joined them for dinner around 6 o'clock. Former detective Sergeant Dwayne Rasher of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
The captain went back in the Zodiac to Splendor, picked some more wine, brought it back in, where they all had dinner and drank some of the wine then.
Restaurant owner Doug Bombard knew Natalie and R.J. for some years.
People were sending champagne over to the table, so they were having a good time.
Between 10 and 10:30, they finished dinner.
They left. I believe it was the manager of the restaurant noted that he thought they had been drinking, and he called the harbor master or the person who was in charge of the pier at the time to watch him.
Safely back on the Splendor, Natalie and R.J. got into a discussion.
They were talking about their careers and how they were staying at home and how they had an agreement at one time that one of them would try to be home at all time with the kids. Christopher Walken got in at a few minutes saying, well, she was a prominent movie actress. She's got to do what she does, which is be an actress. And then he felt, well, I'm getting into somebody else's business here, and he just took a walk out on deck, and he walked back in a few minutes. Everybody was laughing and talking. It was all over.
Natalie went to bed. That discussion with R.J. would later become the source of frenzied rumors. At around midnight, something seemed off.
Short time later, I believe it was the captain, Dennis DeVerne, was wandering around, and he noticed the Zodiac was missing, which had been tied up at the stern of the boat. And so about the same time, Robert Wagner went in to check on Natalie, and she was gone. Their assumption at this time was she got in Zodiac and went back to the restaurant. There was no real panic because she had experience driving this thing. We know that.
But by 1:30 a.m., Natalie had not shown up. Worried, R.J. put out a radio call for help. Catalina Harbor Master Doug Oden put together a search party of shore boats and Baywatch and Harbor Patrol vessels.
Our first thought was looking boat to boat and then on the dinghy dock and on the beaches. Once that was done, we went ahead and moved out offshore, heading to the east initially because the wind was coming out of the west.
At 3:30 a.m., Oden called in the U.S. Coast Guard. At daybreak, a sheriff department's helicopter joined the hunt. Doug Bombard was searching in a Harbor Patrol boat along Blue Cavern Point.
When I saw the helicopter make a turn out there, it drew my attention out to sea, and I saw this red jacket ballooning up.
We got the call in that they had found her, and the question was, is she okay? And the answer was, we'll be in a little while, which basically told us no, she was not okay. Wagner was waiting at the time on shore, and when he was told about that, he just kind of stopped and just sat immobile and just didn't want to get up or talk or do anything.
At 7:44 a.m. on Sunday, November 29th, authorities pronounced 43-year-old Natalie Wood dead. Her body was clad in a red down-filled jacket, a blue flannel nightgown, and wool socks. The Zodiac dinghy was found near shore, about 250 yards away. Natalie's body was at least a quarter-mile from the yacht the Splendor. Investigators were immediately dispatched from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Homicide Unit and the County Medical Examiner's Office. The press got wind of a celebrity death on Catalina Island, and the media frenzy began. On Monday, November 30th, a press conference by Los Angeles County Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Thomas Noguchi fanned the flames of scandal.
I think the issue was not so much what caused the death. The issue was what was transpired before. There was some speculation as to whether she may have been fighting, but news media absolutely went crazy on this subject.
Speculation about Natalie's sudden death began instantly. One of the most prominent rumors was that Natalie and Christopher Walken were having an affair on the set of Brainstorm, and that RJ got jealous. Douglas Trumbull directed Brainstorm.
I think Christopher Walken and Natalie Wood had a tremendous professional friendship. I think there was a very intimate exchange of feelings and knowledge about their craft and about the business. And I don't think there was anything more to it than that.
Dwayne Rasher was the lead detective on the sheriff's homicide investigation.
There was no indication to me at all that there was a problem between the three of them, other than the work. There was love problems. I didn't find anything at all like that.
To this day, some people still wonder about the nastiest rumor of all, that Natalie was the victim of foul